Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonictalk episode 777, which is kind of weird because it's the day after Halloween, which you would think would be 666. So I don't know if 777 has any kind of spiritual or spooky significance, but somehow in my mind there is some kind of weird connection, but even though it's only in my mind. Anyway, this isn't a numerology podcast, as I'm often wont of saying when I do the introduction. It's to do with music technology, and we talk about the technology behind creating music, performing music, recording, synth software, drum machines, all that kind of stuff, the computing, the streaming, there are many aspects to it, and that's what we like to talk about. I want to say thank you very much to everybody in the chat room. It's nice to see some familiar faces there. I see Matt Brown, Kissing Machine, the machine. You've not seen that. We've got Jack, Jimmy Chonga. Also, I think Nick House is there. Nice to see Wagyu as well. As we know, Wagyu is manning the controls of the moderator switch, as he does for many like-minded podcasters. Is very much appreciated, and also is doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to make sure all the chat intermingles in the way that it does with our show. I want to say thank you very much to everybody else who's involved as well. I'm just saying a big thank you. But before I do, let's just have a quick word about Patreon, because that's also it's an important message. Hey, why not consider joining us on Patreon for the price of, well, not even a cup of coffee. You get the warm, fuzzy feeling for supporting us, but also you'll get access to the Sonictalk pre-show, plus ad-free versions of stuff we post to YouTube in case you don't want any of those pesky ads. For a little bit further up the tier, you'll get, actually, there's quite a lot of 360 videos now. These are special videos that we've been shooting with our 360 camera. Also, audio review stem and samples from a recent Audio Fuse, the Arturio Audio Fuse. Did a bunch of samples from the music I was playing in, including stems. They're in MPC beats format, like Loop Pop, we're trying that, and also decent sampler. There's a whole bunch of other stuff besides, including patches and other exclusive videos. Stuck in a car with Gaznick and Jervis in 360. How about that, eh? But if you join us before the end of the show at the upper tier, your name will appear in the credits. That's done automatically. So don't delay. I think there's a 10-minute... It takes 10 minutes for the automatic thing to work. So if you do, maybe we'll see you by the end of the show. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Back to the show. Almost slick. I must work to a script, but I always do. I have to do it just before the show goes live because I have to remember stuff. Before I get onto the guests, also just want to let you know what's coming up. I've got the Norand Mono Mark II. I've nearly finished that. That's a very interesting synthesizer, a bit different to what you'd expect. Don't forget, also we've got the GeForce competition, which I think I've played that. You can win 3 for 3. So they're giving away 3 of their instruments to 3 people. So that's 9 total. If you want to check that out, it's bit.ly/Sonic-G-Force23. Very much appreciated. And I've also picked a winner for the UVI competition, just waiting for them to get back to us. And so competition's a thing we're going to be doing. So anyway, do carry on. We shot Andy shot a rig rundown with Alessandro Cortini and Maths at a Brighton gig recently. There's a 360 performance of Matt up for the Patreon, but also that video will be going up in the next 24 hours or so. And I think that's it for now. So yes, that's still coming up. Let's have a welcome to our guests now. It's only blooming Jem Godfrey from Frost. Jem, of course, keyboard player, songwriter, producer, media composer. I mean, I don't know what. How would you describe your job at the moment? You know, if you were to take a snapshot of the last month, what have you mostly been doing? It's like Jesse from the Fast Show.
Winging it as usual. I think mainly that's been what I'm doing. I got to say, your Patreon. I like your Patreon script. It's a bit like a sheep auction. You ever heard one of those sheep auctions? $3 a month, $3 a month. You get a couple of $6 a month. Company with gas. Gas in the car.
Excellent. You could do the next one. I think it'd be great.
Right. No, I'm. What am I doing? I've actually sort of been back in record producer mode. I've been working with a band called Losers, who Tom Bellamy was in a band called the Cooper Temple Cause, and Eddie Temple Morris, who's a DJ at Virgin Radio. And basically, I've been doing stuff with them for about a decade, and they're sort of giving up to do another album, which they haven't done for ages. So I've just been in a really nice, happy place, just sort of mixing other people's music, which is always a really nice sort of thing to do, because all the creative decisions are kind of taken, and basically you get all the glory for making it sound nice if you do a good job. So no, I've just been doing that really and enjoying it, and I've just moved house. And I think kind of just same old, same old.
Well, I think last time we saw you, you just got hold of a Fairlight Series 2. Was it a Series 2 or a Series 3? I can't remember.
It's a Series 3, actually, yeah. I've been talking to Robbie Puricelli about it. He's been helping me. He's been my Fairlight guru in the UK. But I've split it up because the mainframe is so enormous and so noisy. I've banished it in disgrace. It's about 6 meters away over there behind some baffles. And I've run a really long RS-232 cable to the monitor here. So I've got the green screen, but none of the 10 fans going all the time. So it's actually been quite. It's basically like having an iPad app now, which just kind of defeats the point of it. But you know,
are you? So, is there a lot of call for orchestral stabs in this production that you're doing at the moment, or is it you're using it for other purposes as well? Sorry, I'm being a bit facetious there.
Surprisingly few calls for orchestral stabs. It's kind of the thing about it is it's sort of one of those things that you have to kind of use it sparingly. It's sort of like a mellotron, really. You know, if you just pile loads of mellotron into everything, it's a bit like, oh, okay. But there's still, the thing about it is there's so many sounds that people didn't kind of really use, and certainly on the Series 3, because this thing has got like an SD card with you know everybody's libraries in it. So it's got the 2x libraries and stuff like that. So there's still some sounds that you sort of think, oh, if I play that down 2 octaves, you know, and you get interesting. It's like an interesting ideas jumping off point. I mean, I still don't really know how to work it, but it's sort of happy accidents.
There's a guy locally, a guy called Roger Bolton, who was Mr. Fairlight, and he was based in Bath, and he did sessions for everybody during the 80s and 90s. I think he's just done a whole load of stuff, and he's been doing Fairlight sessions again, sort of bizarrely, for bands in Real World. He lives quite near Real World, and so I think he's sort of back at it. But I mean, he did so much stuff, and he's sort of posting as he's rediscovering it. I follow him on Facebook, and he's posting all these kind of like pictures of sort of stuff, and you think, oh my god, that as well, and that, and he goes, oh yes, I've just found the the theme tune for Police 999 or something like that as well, and you know, all of these kind of and it's just you just think, oh god, yeah, that's all so Fairlight. Anyway, well, I wish you a lot of joy with it, and also the other stuff that you do, of course. I mean, and you've got a modular there as well, which is very very brave of you, considering that you mostly must work to deadlines.
I've got a little. It's a sort of more of a digital one. It's all samplers and sort of drum machines and effects units. So it's kind of again, I built it because I wanted a sort of semi-autonomous, semi-intelligent thing. I could just set up a load of probability in it. It will basically just wander off and come up with stuff, and then I'll write over it on the piano. So it's kind of like a little sketchpad, ideas, happy accidents generator, really.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant fun. I really like it.
Is that a Yamaha? Is that a white Yamaha CP70 or CP80 there?
Yes, the CB70. You probably can't hear it because of the noise cancellation.
I can.
But it used to belong to what's his name? Because his name's still on the power supply. Hang on, James Wrighton, who I believe was in the Klaxons.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, so so I got that from Soundgas. I'm not sure I'm allowed to advertise it, but it's white Tolex, which is why I liked it, and it's my favorite thing. I love it so much.
It's funny, isn't it? You know, the everybody says it's a classic, but you talk to any roadies and it'll be yes, thank God for that. Thank God for samplers, and other stuff. Anyway, and lovely to have you, Jem. I can't wait to hear more from you as we get into our topics. I should probably introduce Gaz as well. Well, I know, not probably. I will introduce Gaz as well. Mr. Gaz Williams there, who's in Bristol in his studio, where he's got a lovely out of focus series of I don't know what's back there. Loads of stuff. I know what's back there. Anyway, how are you, Gaz? You well?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Nice to be here. What's new in my world? What have I been up to? Well, I haven't talked to you since my Edinburgh gig a few weeks back.
No, I saw. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, thanks. I loved that. That felt like I'd sort of moved into a new sort of, I don't know, tier, if you will, of leaving sort of beginner status behind. I felt, which is really fun. I guess one of the things for me there is that being a seasoned musician, I think would be fair thing to call myself, but in terms of a modular solo performer or indeed a duo performer, because me and Steve Davis are working a lot together now as a duo, and also setting up a record label, which I've mentioned before. Doing that gig in Edinburgh just felt that was for Expert Sleepers event called Wavetable. So if you want to see it, it's on
that's right.
The Wavetable Edinburgh YouTube channel. But just trying to find ways to be myself, to kind of bring something that that's inherent in me into my modular or my electronic live performance, and starting to to really, really feel that now. So that's
excellent. Oh, that's great. I'm happy.
Yeah. Thanks.
Gaz has Wagyu has posted it in the in the thing.
Thanks, Wagyu.
Can I do that? I think I can do this. Does that work? Let's see if that works. Yeah, there we go. I put it up there. I've got this new third that I'm just but it should be so people should be able to in the timestamps be able to see all of that. Okay, well let's get on to some topic. I mean, I guess the first topic we have to do, and we do this once a year or there or thereabouts, is of course. Let me just press the button and get the right thing going. Yes, haven't we got? Yes, there is, isn't there?
The new MacBook
New Macs,
Pro.
M3 chips.
For the first
MacBook
time
Pro,
ever,
iMac, and MacBook Air, I think. Space black finish, which is essentially dark grey. So they call it spooky fast and all of that stuff, but M3 chips are
family of chips, the most advanced we've created for a laptop.
the most advanced we've created. It's all, it's all classic kind of Apple marketing speak. As far as I can tell, I've got a MacBook 13-inch here, which has more ports on it than the base level latest version, this new MacBook. And to get the same specification just in terms of I/O and storage, I'd have to spend about 2,400 quid. And I don't feel like this is compromised anyway. I'm not sort of thinking I really do need more computing power. So it's quite an interesting thought. I mean, it seems like what's being charged for now is just connectivity. The iMac was also there. That's been updated to the M3 chip. That middle one is about $15.99. That looks quite good. It's only 24-inch, but it's got I think it's got 2 Thunderbolts and 3 or 2 USB 3 ports, so that feels a little bit more connected, even though it's a self-contained unit. But I know I'm not trying to start a kind of what's worse, what's better, but as we know, these have been somewhat of a revolution in terms of sort of power for what's in. And I think for those of us who did upgrade from the previous Intel-based Mac, saw an enormous change in it just bloody works. But I don't know not quite sure what this would be. I don't know, Jem, are you working on a modern Mac, or have you got a big old studio cheese gratey kind of thing still that you run all your stuff on?
No, I bought Mac Studio, I think, in the spring, which
okay.
I think is running an M1 Ultra chip. Let's have a look. Hang on. It's it's an M1 Ultra. I don't know whether it's my age, but I think you're right. It is about connectivity. Seems to be the kind of the main point now. But because I think for audio, I don't use great massive sample libraries, multi-terabyte things, and I've a few years ago now, I sort of Pro Tools, because I work on Pro Tools. It kind of got to a point where it never really freaked out anymore, and it all just kind of worked. And I went from HD systems to a native system, and that works fine. And it's all stable. And I think I'm a little bit out of the race of chips now, and the kind of the upgrading process, because I've got enough. Although interestingly, when I went to the M1 chip, I was thinking, oh, brilliant. Okay, so I'll run Pro Tools, and still half the plugins don't work. So I've got to run it in Rosetta mode, and that's still plenty fast. So I kind of, I'm looking at that cartoon girl riding a wolf into the distance, and sort of, Yeah, I don't really know.
Good for her. Yeah, good for her.
Exactly. Good for her.
Not something I particularly need, but good for her. Yeah. If I did want, and I did want to animate that at such a degree that I could focus in on the hair follicle on the wolf's head, then I could, I suppose, if I wanted to. But we don't need to do. It's interesting, isn't it? Everything sort of feels good enough. Certainly for me. I mean, and I'm editing video on this thing. I mean, okay, I'm not using sort of 6K or 4K video, but for all my purposes, I haven't really kind of hit the edges yet, and I've still got half the space left on my hard drive. So it feels like, I mean, I know, I don't know. What do you think, Gaz? I mean, I know you like to keep up to date, but I mean, you're kind of M1'd up, or M2'd. I don't know what you've got. It doesn't, it feels like,
I've
do
got
you
an
need anything
M1
else, really?
Yeah, I've got M1 Studio Max, which is great. I haven't got a problem with it. So, but it does feel like you're kind of having your nose rubbed in the dirt if you watch these presentations and they, say it's 60% faster than your machine that you just bought, I don't know, 18 months ago or something. But I've also got a bit of a theory, like when you watch these Mac presentations, only since the Silicon era, they cut to this kind of basement room, and there's this kind of, I can only describe him as like this, like Bond villain character, Johnny somebody, who just stares and he just goes through all the facts and he doesn't smile at all and stares at the camera. So I think, they've clearly employed a Bond villain to develop the Silicon Mac. So that's my theory. But I think that you're right. I mean, I moved up from my trash can Mac Pro was great for music. It, and still would be. It was only that I was starting to work at 4K video that meant that I moved up to the M1. Right. And I've recently made a short horror film on my Mac that was all at 4K, and great. No problem at all. I'm not craving the new stuff at all. However, what was really interesting, I think, with this announcement, and I think should be kind of noted, is that the new iMacs that have now, are they M3, the new iMacs that they've just announced?
Yes, they are, yeah.
And they're like $12.99 or something for...
No connections. For the 12.99 one, though. Literally nothing. I mean, no Ethernet, and I can't remember what the other thing was, but there's just very little connectivity, which I think is the issue. You've got
a bunch of ports on there, though. You can probably just put a hub on there, but it's just I mean, it's expensive, but it's not ridiculously expensive, and those machines would just be absolutely beautiful for most people. Music for 10 years, probably, But I think in a way, they have kind of created a bit of an issue by making their machines a bit too good. I mean, it certainly affected the iPad market, that people buy iPads and don't really need to upgrade them very often. The phone model doesn't translate to iPads. And I think similarly with the MacBook Pros, and certainly, well, let's say the Silicon, the M1 was a bit of a reset, but if you bought in at the M1 stage, those computers are going to have probably a 10-year run, I think, which I mean, I've got a 2001, I've got 2021. I'm nearly 3 years in, and it doesn't. I'm not thinking, if only I had. I mean, I suppose it'd been, that's it. Sorry, go, Jem.
Well, because there's another thing, because I was just on that point. It's I kind of used to buy my Macs in 3-year cycles, which sort of timed itself with when the Apple Care ran out. And because you always know that as soon as the Apple Care runs out, about 2 weeks later, it's going to go. So it was kind of like but now it's a rolling subscription, like a yearly thing. That whole, in my head, that whole cycle, the 3-year cycle, is completely gone now, because, as you say, you can just, if it falls over, you can get it fixed or you can get it sorted out. And I think, as Gaz says, 10 years would be. I've got people who are still using cheese grater Macs, and it's all fine. So yeah.
Well, music.
Anyway,
there's only a few music apps that really push that push the need for that kind of thing, and music hasn't really changed that much. Not in the same way that video making or has changed. So yeah, great. I mean,
yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I mean, I guess that also means, because they're power efficient as well, it means that we're now not using as much power, we're not recycling as much, not chucking them away, which is also got to be a good thing, right? So there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. So, and if you are that way inclined, I mean, I think people who haven't moved from Intel yet, they're the ones who are going to get the biggest payoff, because whatever they get is going to be a massive improvement. Maybe not connectivity wise, but there are ways around all of that stuff. Okay, I'm going to just play an ad from our friends over at iZotope, just because it's about that time. Craft the perfect listening experience with the ultimate collection of mastering tools. Whether you're putting the finishing touches on the next chart-topping hit or producing your first song, Ozone 11 delivers cutting-edge processing and AI-powered workflows. Effortlessly make your tracks release-ready and unlock the full potential of your productions. And don't forget, you can save 10% on any software purchase by visiting iZotope.com/Sonictalk and entering the code SONIC10 at checkout. Excellent. We do thank them very much for their support. It's always much appreciated. Okay, there's so many things. There's so many things that we could get through. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll go to the. Let's go to this one. I think this one might be. I'm assuming this is going to work. Yeah, why not? Partly because I really like the soundtrack of this UVI Falcon. I mean, this is kind of as big a deal as, the whole, almost like having a new reactor or a new contact, but more so. Falcon is just absolutely jam-packed with synthesis. I mean, it's not just, a synth. I think Ben Jordan said, didn't he, in a recent video, it's the one plugin that could handle sort of everything. It's his Desert Island one. I know you have to take some of what he says with a pinch of salt, but it just... Physical modelling, FM, additive, subtractive, sample processing, external audio processing, effects processing. I mean, there's just absolute tons of it. A Falcon 3, I know Rich Hilton really rates the UVI Falcon engine as well. Just so I do like the music they do for these things. I don't know whether, I mean, you're working in production a lot. Jem, is it something you've come across, or are you more contact-based, or is there something like this that you use, or do you use this? Are you aware?
Well, do you know what? It's a funny. I've got to say, I've got to admit. By the way, I didn't mean Cheese Grater Max. I meant the old towers, because obviously the Cheese Grater Max, the new Max. I think I've got an early version of it somewhere, because I'm in the UVI stuff. I do use that for. It's got those brilliant sort of. Vintage drum machine libraries and all those sorts of things, which I do use. But I've got to say, my confession is that I kind of, when I sort of saw the list and thought, actually, I don't know anything about this synth. So I've had a look at it, and I've got to say, it looks. I might, if there's a demo, I'm going to definitely download it and have a look at it, because it's the sort of thing that, if you were going on a writing trip, for example, and just take a laptop, I'm just thinking that all you need would be that. It looks like. As an ideas generator. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily sort of take it into the studio and it'd be my sole sort of, act. But in terms of, because I used to use Nexus quite a lot, which I know everyone goes, whoa, whenever you say that word. But it looks like it could be sort of one of those sorts of do-it-all synths that could provide lots of sort of ideas. So I'm intrigued. Yeah, I'm intrigued, definitely.
That's interesting you mentioned Nexus, because I know Yoad actually makes libraries for Nexus, but he's a real audiophile when it comes to his sample stuff, and he said it sounds really good. I mean, I know it's quite a premium thing, isn't it, the Nexus? But I think Falcon 3 is $199 at the moment, regularly until November the 5th. So you've got a few days. It's normally $349, but also new Falcon licenses include $100/€100 voucher towards any soundware purchase, which would be an expansion pack. I mean, it's just endless.
I couldn't work out. I was trying to look at the website last night. I was trying to work out because it's like Nexus where you buy these add-on packs and stuff. I couldn't actually. Maybe because I couldn't see it, but I couldn't see what the price was of these add-on libraries, and it's always that sort of slight.
They're about €40, I think.
Well, yeah, okay.
Falcon expansions.
It's like whenever you get an app,
it says
in-app. in-app purchases. You think, oh, here we go, like 90 quid, 150 quid. But that, I mean, I had a quick look around some of the libraries, and I think it's. I'll have to have a play with it, because it sort of did seem like some of the SoundCloud demos were a little bit less awesome than that particular soundtrack on the promo. So I think I just have to have a play with it and have a go, because it's always that, if there's like 20 titles in the library, you sort of think, oh, where do I start and how do I look at it and stuff. But I think if you get a voucher for a couple, then it might be worth having a play. No, it looked great. It looks really good. I mean, the granular stuff and the sampling and the, all that, and the physical modeling. It's sort of, if you do have a one-stop shop plugin, if you're writing, and I sometimes go away and do writing trips, it's CPU efficient, and you don't have to worry about having different plugins or your authorizations or whatever. So for me, that would be a really good writing synth, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. Just want to say thanks to Di Stanton, another tenner for Nick's Stream Deck. I know you're very keen for. I do actually have a Stream Deck, but I don't use it because there aren't actually enough buttons on it. So that's one of the reasons it's not. And it's purely incompetence. It's not the equipment that's the problem. It's the operator. I'd just like to point that out. Anyway, Gaz,
yeah.
I know. I mean, you and I famously we looked at Spectrasonics, didn't we? Omnisphere, and we were both sat there and we just went, oh my God, it's just too much. So I'm not sure whether this is the sort of thing that you would necessarily gravitate towards, but it does seem if one was starting out and needed a sort of do it all thing, you'd be hard pressed to find something that did as much as this, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does represent amazing value for money. I mean, certainly at that introductory price, and I think if you are a Falcon owner, you get the upgrade from version 2 to version 3 for free. I think. Which,
it may be, yeah. I haven't got that bit.
Amazingly,
that's reasonable,
generous. But also, it's quite funny because since I've plunged headfirst into the kind of modular world, and I'm thinking, God, 200 quid, it sort of gets me like an LFO or something, in modular. And then like this, like you just look at all of the new stuff that it comes with, which I have to say, it comes with a harmonic resonator, which that has been one of my favorite types of devices in recent times. That's
like the wing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I've been using. But I've also got a module, an older one, a 4MS one that's called the multi-band resonator. I can't remember quite the title, but where you can, essentially play with different tuned resonances, put in drums through that sort of thing. It's just outstanding. And it's quite a simple effect. But so I noticed that the Falcon 3 gains one of those, and also just tons and tons and tons of synthy kind of, like new oscillators. There's a new ladder filter, all sorts of stuff, it's like a bounty of riches, isn't it? And coming back to the point you're saying with Omnisphere, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, I do get a little bit overwhelmed. And I haven't really, like I've mentioned many times, I haven't really used software for any creative purposes for quite a while now, and
it's all about control, isn't it, for this sort of thing? We always come back to the sort of like, how do I control it in a musical and intelligent way that doesn't take me 8 years to set up and map my controllers? And I suppose actually I didn't put this in, but then Korg have just released those two the stage keys, which actually have query the query thing. I think Luke popped up. I think they're sending me one. I haven't looked at it, so that we can map things much more straightforwardly. I would say
I was going to mention that. I was going to mention that very thing. That so if you had a laptop, one of those Korg, because they work as an audio interface, only output only. Yeah, just like an
pricey though. They seem quite expensive.
Polyphonic aftertouch on it. Well, more than that. I mean, it's full. It's a full MPE. Is it MPE? Well, no, I mean, it's polyphonic aftertouch, MIDI 2. Built-in audio interface, lots of little screens for all the controllers. So, I mean, that coupled with Falcon and, pow, it's enormous. However, I don't know. For me, that now is just not where I'm particularly interested in or ahead in, really. So, but I mean, certainly just to reiterate that point about Falcon, though, and at that £199 point, bargain, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Creative.
it's a bargain. Anyway, yes, I wanted to put that in there because it's, I think it's it's a key thing. Right, oh gosh, we're flying through things. I think maybe what we'll get onto is let's have a look at the let's have a quick look at this, because this is sort of not necessarily something that will take all that long. But and it gives me an excuse to play this bit, which is obviously the third wave. This isn't the desktop. This is the keyboard version, which I reviewed, and I must admit I was very impressed with. For a first synth of this magnitude, it is an astonishing achievement, and it's the sort of thing that I'd imagine somebody. It's now available in desktop version. I think the desktop version, I mean, is about 3,495, so it's about $1,500 dollars less than the original. I mean, it's a chunk of change. It's a premium instrument. It wouldn't surprise me if you were maybe hankering after one of these or had tried one out, because it sounds fab, I have to say, Jem. I mean, the sound quality. When you hear it in a room, it's like, goodness me, it's like this. When you're getting that extra octave below and the silky top end, it does sound really quite good, actually, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I've got one. You can't see it. It's behind the modular. I've got the keyboard version, and it is unbelievable. It's what I love about it is obviously because they have that, Bob Coover, who sort of developed it and did look at. He's I think ex-Sequential employee now, but did a lot of the DSP on it. And I bought it directly from them, because this was before they had UK retailers, and they were so brilliant about sending it over, all the way over here and just playing with it. It's a tour de force. I mean, as you say, it is a chunk of change, but it's got all that character, all that PPG fabulous kind of cold, lovely goodness of the 80s. But then it's also capable of so much more. It's being able to record your own, it just even being able to speak into it, and it turns that stuff into wavetables, and they keep updating the OS. Every sort of few months they'll send something down and say, all right, we've fixed this, we've added that. And if you say to them, what have you thought about that? And they go, that's a good point. And it's a really good, they're a really open-minded company, and I think they deserve every bit of success. But I do wish I'd known about the desktop, because it's just, the form factor is just brilliant, isn't it? Looking at it, it was one of those ones where I looked at it and went, "Oh, I can't buy another one." So for me, it would be perfect, because I've kind of got the sort of the way the studio is set up is it's all a little bit of a sort of closed within everything within reach. And if I had a that version would be just brilliant over there. But as the reason the third wave's currently sat at the back is because I haven't got space, so I have to sort of swap synths out. But it's one of those, it's kind of one of those synths that has a sound you've not really heard before, and it's one of those things that you sort of think I think it's a classic. I really do. I think it's a future classic.
I would agree. I mean, I think the one thing I would say, and this is when you boot up that, because they're obviously going really hard for the PPG nostalgia, and to be honest, I think so. They front loaded the PPG presets, and I think they are the weakest part of what the synth does. So you're playing them and you go, oh yeah, I suppose that sounds a bit 80s, and you go, well, if I was a kind of propaganda nut, I might be kind of getting really excited about it. But to be honest, compared to all the other stuff it does, it's the most, it's sort of almost, it's a bit like, well, yeah, whatever, just bin those and you want to start at the other end of the preset range if you're going to be flipping presets on that thing, because that's when it gets really interesting. I was very, and I think the only thing for me with it was, and it may be updated, is the multi-timbral handling and the switching of layers and stuff was a bit clunky and not very intuitive. And I think if they finesse that a bit, then perhaps that's going to be a big improvement. I don't know if you found that.
Yeah, the one thing I found on mine is trying to select, because you've got those 4 buttons to select the different parts, and sometimes you have to kind of really press one down and then one sort of stops flashing. You never quite know what you've selected sort of straight away. Yeah. It's almost got to, it's a little bit, it is a little bit, some bits sort of feel a little bit like they're a bit slow on the uptake, but I think the effects in it, I mean, the tape emulation, the tape delay, it's the bucket brigade, it's just got a really lovely, warm kind of, for a digital synth, which is unashamedly is a digital synth, it's kind of, apart from the analog filters, but it's still got that kind of as you say. I mean, it's the first few presets are a little bit like, because I think they deliberately had to keep it sort of PPG, but then all the effects come in, and the filtering and the sequencing and the multi-timbre thing, you know, and then you suddenly realise that it's a vast synth, and there's so much sort of potential. Even having one sound with no effects, just with the wavetable moving, and you know, each preset is huge. It's brilliant synth.
Yeah. I mean, Gaz, I think it's a bit of a future classic. I mean, obviously, it's great that these things exist. I mean, they're not, you know, not many people can afford them. I certainly can't, but it's nice to have spent a little bit of time with one. But so I think, you know, it's just, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say, but that's it.
I haven't actually had hands-on on one, so but the thing that I can relate to in the most is the most recent one. That is, I've got the Vector synth here. And when you were mentioning that about the presets, I definitely found that the presets at the end of the library, I think their newer presets were more interesting. So maybe as a future thing, anytime you're auditioning something, start at the back. But I mentioned that about the Vector synth because I think that could be a future classic as well. I know it's definitely a bit of a Marmite synth. Sorry to go off on another synth, but having that, you know, different approach to synthesis is, well, sorry, I'm not sure how to make this relevant other than I found that one, I started using it with that Keith McMillan Q Nexus.
Yeah, it works with Poly, doesn't it, nicely?
And sort of the MPE mode that's now in this. And then that just seemed to be like, okay, when you've got these fantastic moving sounds, having the control under your fingers where you can really feel that control and expressivity, you know, I think it makes that make sense for me. So I suppose my question then would be, does it come with in the keyboard one? Does that have a poly aftertouch, or you know, is it MPE capable? I mean, you know, you mentioned about the PPG, but can you sort of use it in very much in the modern idiom?
The engine is MPE capable, but the keyboard's just standard mono aftertouch.
Right. Yes. I mean, like for me, that
it's a nice keyboard actually, but yeah.
That poly aftertouch, and with the Q Nexus, you know, you can do the up and down on the keys, which I guess is part of their MPE sort of side of it, though. Brought it to life, made it really.
Often does. I mean, I think that, yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's a lovely instrument, and if anyone gets the opportunity to play with one, it's very hard to sort of not to be impressed with it. When you're in a room with it, it's one of those things that, because quite often, also when you're in a room with a synth and then you record that synth, sometimes it can be quite different in terms of the experience you have. But I think that it translates quite well into the recorded medium as well. Sorry, I was just looking for Robert Fat Dutch Hatch. Thanks very much. Nice to see you, mate. Ill at work. Oh, I'm sorry to ill at work. I'm not sure those two things should be going together. Maybe I'm at work, but thank you very much. Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is just have a brief mention from our friends over at Native Instruments. It was all under the same Native Instruments banner. We're all family here. So anyway, here it comes. Kontrol is an advanced MIDI keyboard controller available in 3 size options. Stay in the flow with an intuitive connection to instruments, effects and your DAW, plus immersive navigation on a high-resolution screen. Choose from 49 or 61 semi-weighted keys or 88 fully weighted hammer action keys, all with polyphonic aftertouch as standard. To save 10% on your next Native Instruments software purchase, use the code SONIC10 at nativeinstruments.com. Some restrictions apply. Yes, thank you very much to them for their support. Okay, I'm going to get about this. One of these topics is kind of, I suspect, one of the reasons that we managed to persuade Jem to come out of the woodwork and not be, because he had me on the show for almost a year, so, or perhaps even longer than a year. So I'm going to get onto that one. I'm just going to try and find that. Let me just grab it quickly. And it came from, there was a discussion. If I just, well, I'll just press the button. What happens if I do that? I think that if I do this, it'll just, yeah. It was just literally in Reddit. Occasionally, when I'm sort of maybe running a bit low on topics, I just scan the Reddit ones. And this one is We Are the Music Makers. And it was just, how does Coldplay achieve such a good sound live? Which in itself, is a fairly, through variety of use of a lot of technology and all other sorts of things. Now, what I'm going to do now is play, there's a video, because I know that Frost, which is the band that Jem's in, has just finished a live album, or has certainly been involved in the work of live albums. So I'm going to play that video, and so just as an illustrative point. So this is from the Blu-ray Heartstrings DVD. It's a trailer. I'm sure we'll get busted for it. Yeah. There's Jem himself. And off they go. I mean, I don't know. I guess that is the nature of a live album. Live albums, as we know, they're kind of legendary. I don't know if it's still true, but wasn't the Peter Frampton Live the biggest selling live album ever, or at least up to that point? And as we know, there are various bands that have sort of classic live albums, and Frank Zappa very famously, lots of those. And I suppose the question is, certainly playing live, there are a lot of factors involved. Somebody like Coldplay will probably have some playback. They'll be using probably digital consoles. They'll be using live plugins across those so they can get fairly close to the record. I suspect quite a lot of what they do is live. They seem to be those kinds of... I'm not trying to get into the kind of is playback and an issue, because I know, Gaz, you feel very strongly about that. But I'm just curious as to how much leeway you get, say with a live album. How live is it likely to be? And I suppose I was going to come to you first, Jem, because presumably, I don't know if you were behind the scenes involved in the recording, mixing, production of your live release, or whether somebody else does it. But you would say you would know. I want to hear the dirty secrets, I suppose. How much is live? What's the basis of a track?
Well, it's actually in that particular one. It's because last time I was here, we were prepping to do that tour. It was last August before last, and we did it in November a year ago. And actually, my whole point was, it's exactly this point of how live is live, and I wanted it to be really live. So what we did was, we had a brilliant sound engineer called Johnny Haskett, who does Divine Comedy and Streets and all kinds of people. And basically, the only concession we had was the idea was I was going to record. We were going to video the Bath show that was going to be filmed, and we did 5 shows in total for this little tour. And the sort of point of it was, as little overdubbing as possible. So the best way to do that in our instance was to basically, the concession was we had to run the whole set to a click. That was the one thing we had to do, because basically what we did then is we took the spine of the visuals was Craig, our drummer's drum performance at Bath. So basically that isn't really touched. Thankfully he's a really brilliant musician. So basically that's pretty much what he played. And then what we would do is I recorded all the other shows. And so basically I got back to the studio and just had 5 shows in Pro Tools. And so as long as what Craig was doing was kind of, was what he did. And he played brilliantly. So then basically what I would do is, and we'd all run into a click. So if there was a section where maybe I wasn't at my absolute shiny best, I could maybe take a bit from Edinburgh, and put that in there. And it was basically sort of like a little bit of, the majority of it was that show. But if there were bits where, there was some howlers, or like there was a bit where John forgot a lyric, and we also had a rough visual edit. So I could see what was going on. So if there was a bit where we couldn't fix, for example, John getting a bit of a lyric wrong. Sorry, John. So what I could say to the editor, Rob, is I could say, can you just Craig for 2 seconds, and then I would get a little bit from a different show where, so it's a little bit of, but then people have done that forever. It's always, you do that with gigs and stuff. And I think that what was important was the drum sound was brilliant, because Johnny Haskett basically set the kit up so brilliantly that I didn't use any drum replacing at all. I just used a bunch of SSL plugins, and and with all the B series, channels to put on each one, and it just sort of came to life. So what was great about it was was us performing, and there were, I think, but there was, it was a little bit of a collage, but the drum performance from Bath was exactly the same, because you knew that visually you'd see Craig and it would always be that performance, because there's nothing worse than seeing, you've got a visual and then you can clearly see or hear the drummer's not doing it, and then the illusion or the confidence is lost, isn't it? So yeah, it was a sort of collage.
I did not know. Well, first of all, I really apologise. Why the hell wasn't I at the Bath gig? Why didn't I even kind of clock it was on and get you for a guest list at least, or come and film something with you? Deepest apologies. I feel very remiss. Where did you play? Was it Forum or Pavilion?
Comedia.
Okay. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's right. Okay, but also I hadn't thought about that. The fact that you would replace takes from other, that makes kind of quite a lot of sense. And in a way, it's. I don't see that's a problem with cheating, because ultimately, most vocals or many guitar solos or whatever are comped, aren't they, from a series of takes to take bits.
I was going to say, in terms of the ethics of it being a performance, I think that's all right, because we did actually play it. We might not have played it that night. so that's that's the only caveat. But it was still, and there was a couple of bits where, I was like, my voice broke in one bit, and then I will have to resort to doing a little bit of overdubbing. So what I did is I had the same mic I used live, stuck it to the same compressor, and then I used the vocal that I'd fluffed up as the template, which I used VocalLine with the plugin. So basically, it mapped it to exactly the same, small time stretch segment. So it worked visually. But there was just a couple of those bits, because you can't. I think these days you can't. The people who buy stuff, they expect a certain level of quality, and if you go on stage and you're going and you put it out, I think people would kind of go, it's not brilliant. So I would say 98%, 99% of
that's interesting.
The DVD was us playing, which was, when we did rehearse finally, which was always a bonus.
That's really interesting you say. Sorry, Gaz, I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this as well, and I'll come to you in a second, but it just reminds me, there was a short story, I think it might be Roald Dahl, of a sort of psychopath murderer, or maybe it was another one, where this guy basically travels the world to dispatch people who ruined classic recordings. So somebody who maybe dropped something during the Deutsche Grammophon recording of Bach's Brandenburg Concerto, they find out who they were, what seat they were in, and they do away with them, so they will never ruin another recording again. And so I suppose what I'm saying is there is a sense of responsibility to the punter to try and give them the best possible experience. Gaz, I know you feel quite strongly about the certainly playback in a live situation, but in terms of making, have you ever had to build or deal with live recordings and turn them into of finished recorded products?
Yeah, and I mean, if there's a lot of acoustic instrument or, a lot of mics on stage, getting ghosts of previous performance, of the wrong things, it can be technically very, very difficult. I mean, I think, in the case of Coldplay, they're going to be a mixture of playback and live, but almost all are going to be on click as well, like Jem said, and therefore that makes the editing process a lot easier. I'm really, 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 I don't know. I'm a bit confused about my state on this in a way. It's like, if the live recording is meant to be a live recording, of that particular concert, like a documentary kind of approach to it, that it's meant to be, this is what happened.
Live at Fillmore East, for instance, yeah.
Yeah. If I knew that it had been tampered with, and I do know with some live albums that I've been really fond of, then to discover that they've been tampered with is a little bit disappointing. Just, I mean, that's kind of to my muso sort of senses rather than the, end user enjoyment sort of side of things. I mean, like in jazz or classical, the idea of, tampering with a live performance would be very frowned upon, jazz especially.
Well, yes, but you say that, but then the thing is back in the day, a lot of stuff was not cobbled together, but the genius was not only getting the recording, but the edit of the 2 tracks. So they would take the B section of such and such, and then solo from another one, and they would do that, and that that was legitimate.
When In a Silent Way came out, Miles Davis, 1969, and there was like, that was a studio-based recording, but there were edits, tape edits, and that, going between different takes and different things like that, and it was quite controversial because of that. And I think maybe that changed things going forward.
Okay, interesting.
But I think it's a tricky one, really. I've got like just a deep passion for when a band is playing outside of themselves. That gig was just a transcendental experience.
Yeah, and they happened to record it as well.
I happened to record it. However, I've played gigs which I've thought have been transcendental and then listened to the recording and it's been anything but. So, that's why I'm conflicted about this.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do understand it. And I think ultimately you want to make something that's really enjoyable. So if you can, I think Jem's approach is probably the most sort of honourable way to do it. If you are indeed going to make a really nice, production. But I mean, live, the amount of variables, I've done loads of live recordings and, it is really, really difficult to get it right. So to be able to, lots of live concerts are often, lots of live albums are culled from different performances. That is fairly standard anyway.
Yeah, so you'd record the whole tour and just go, well, that song from Tuesday night was better than the one. So that makes sense.
And and then lots of albums have been overdubbed, as we mentioned. Going way back into the 70s is probably when that kind of approach started. But as I say, it is actually really difficult. I've had to do certain things, and phase issues, all sorts of things which are really difficult to get around. Always
we go. Lady Aptitude said Charles Mingus even went and overdubbed his bass part because he felt it didn't come through enough on the original recording. There we go. That's
I think that was a lot of the when you look at sort of like 70s footage, and you're going, where are the monitors? Or they've got so how they managed to get those recordings is kind of beyond me. My favorite live album of all time is Gentle Giant's Playing the Fool, which is just an astonishing piece of work. Now, I'd imagine there has been a little bit of tinkering on that, although I don't know what the official line is. But again, what's that from? About 1970, I think it came out in 76. I think it's from a tour from a bunch of different concerts in the mid-70s. And there's so much instrument swapping going on, but you don't hear any kind of clatter and buzz, and how they did it. It's incredible. But
silent switches.
But I don't know. I mean, possibly then things like when you've a much more controlled environment, like the Tiny Desk concerts, or like maybe back in the 70s, the Old Grey Whistle Test, or, there you can get a really sort of true representation of a live performance. I don't think any of those things have been, adjusted.
Yeah, the TV stuff works really well.
Yeah, because it's such a controlled environment. But gigs, they're just not, so I guess, this is where the technology does come in helpful. And, and as Jem said, you don't want to be putting out something that makes people hate you, or makes people realise how rubbish you actually are.
Have you heard our music?
We're all insecure enough as it is. We don't need to reinforce the actual truth. I think my favourite is there's a really good recording of Frank Zappa band George Duke era of Inca Roads, and it's part. I think it's part of the Thousand Motels sort of suite, and it's got Ruth Underwood playing and George Duke, and it's got all the animation of the guitar, and and Frank Zappa famously recorded most of his stuff, or certainly a lot of it, and there are some live albums there. But I think there's a sort of the difference is that the band were probably about the best musicians on the planet in that genre at the time, so that's quite helpful, I suppose.
He would use the live recordings as the basis for the studio albums a lot of the time as well. So if you take the album One Size Fits All, which is quite possibly the best Zappa album there is, and it is that George Duke era, and has the track Inca Roads, was a lot of, there were a lot of tracks that were recorded for a TV special, but in the
Fillmore. Was it Fillmore?
No. Was it the Rainbow Bar and Grill? No, next door. The Roxy.
Roxy, yeah.
Roxy and elsewhere, yeah.
Roxy, same kind of era. But I mean, he used to use, he would record every single gig. But I mean, I think with Roxy and Elsewhere, the live album, there was a thing where when that was recorded, and it was filmed at the same time, but it was recorded at an incompatible speed to the video. So it was only a few years ago that concert ever saw the light of day with the audio and visuals properly
matched it.
Yeah, because it's taken until really, recent technology for that kind of synchronization.
M1 Max. It was all done on a Mac Mini. Yeah.
That thing about like technology and like sort of how the technology, the processing power is incredible. I saw something on YouTube yesterday, which was I can't remember the name of the guy. He was involved in that Mythbusters thing. He took the $130 Thunderbolt cable and compared it to like a $5 kind of USB-C cable, and going, why on earth is this cable,
Oh yes, I heard about that.
Yeah, and then they did a bunch of kind of like I don't know what
CAT scan, didn't they? Yeah,
CAT scans, and then they said that the processing power in the cable was more than the Apollo moon mission that they had for the guidance system for that in the cable. Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. But when you see how much technology is in that cable, it's like, okay, maybe that's why it's so expensive. But
I think I heard a report on that piece where they said, not only that, it's like the kind of the earthing, the cable tensioning, all of this stuff is like really, really high end. I mean, it's hard to, you look at two cables and you think, but as we know, they're not all equal cables, and quite often you can get into all sorts of trouble with it.
Adam Savage, I think is the name. Thanks, Tatties.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Yeah, nice.
That's a can of worms, you there, Nick?
Well, I saw it and I thought this would be a really interesting topic, because I think really, I mean, there's been it's certainly in recent years, the last 2 or 3 years, the whole kind of questioning sources, the how much can we trust people with their opinions on stuff, YouTube influencers and all of this stuff. You get people with lots and lots of reach, and yet may not be as diligent as one would hope, but nonetheless, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that we can apply to music, and it's I just think it's really interesting, some of the techniques, because when you consider it like a live album replacing stuff, particularly if you've got a lot of spill and a lot of feeds, probably a lot easier in a monitorless situation where everybody's on in-ears. That would make sense. Hugely. It would probably be easier. I don't know, do you use in-ears, or have you got good old-fashioned 15-inch drivers at your feet?
No, we're all on transmitters and drivers and stuff, which kind of it's sort of it can make for a very soulless rehearsal experience, because you kind of basically you people have come in and we're kind of going like this, and it is like this. Remember those videos where they had like dancing in the streets, where they just took all the music.
Yeah, they take the music off. Yeah.
It's basically like, well, that's like a frost rehearsal, basically. So it's kind of.
So what you really need to do is make sure your roadie has to make sure that they oil your chair and anything that might squeak and be really.
Yeah, exactly right. But it's interesting. I mean, in terms of that sort of thing about, you know, correcting performances. I mean, this is another whole can of worms. You know, I mean, in a couple of years' time, what's AI going to do to all this? You know, we can profile our voices and our performances, and you know, and that's a whole other sort of very slightly chilling situation that we're going to be in. You know, what happens if people can, you know, you basically just send a computer in to fix your album for you? It'd be a bit weird.
Well, it's really interesting, because I think that we will rebel. I mean, you know, if we look ahead sort of 10 or 15 years, what the cycle will be, because we had a very perfect and gridded pop. And we still do to a degree, but nowhere near as much as it was. And I remember there's that sort of the movement of, it's like a form of hip hop, which, you know, when I used to listen to hip hop, and hip hop was part of my audio landscape when I was, you know, working in clubs and stuff, it was groovy. And now there's this whole genre of it that just sounds out of time to me. It doesn't sound groovy. It sounds like it's just wrong. And you know, that I understand that that's probably what the kids want, and maybe partly what they want it for is because everything has been so perfect for such a long time. They want a bit of imperfection. So if you take that and extrapolate and think, well, AI will come in and fix everything, and then everybody will just want to go to punk gigs where nobody can play because it'll be more refreshing and more interesting and more human, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe that's what will happen.
I think that's right. I think it's that. I mean, there was a thing that I think it was Nuno Betancourt out of Extreme was saying the other week, and you know, it's that thing of if he was saying, oh, you know, if people are saying AI is going to destroy music, and he's like, well, not for people who can play, or not for people who can, you know, who can improvise, or can, you know, or it's not sort of so computer based. It's kind of that interesting thing of you know, maybe it will sort of reinforce, as you say, a sort of a cult of musician again. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting sort of debate.
Well,
It'd be interesting to watch.
I would be really curious to see if, you know, because as we can see, AI can work incredibly fast, whether or not AI could, you know, because we could say to AI, make me a kind of, you know, we can describe in sort of basic terms, you know, what kind of music cue we might want. It's sort of like, well, it's a fairly horrible, but there's a sort of bed that implies, you know, sunshine on a rainy day, or whatever it may be that you told it to do. What would it be like on a real-time input where it was improvising against musical input? How long before we could get to that stage? Okay, you are a saxophonist, here's your backing track, off you go. What and how wild, whether that's even a thing. I mean, I would find that quite interesting. I wonder if that's even a thing. And because if you think about it, computing power, it's not inconceivable that it could be way better than humans, because it can think much faster, albeit not instinctively, and it may make a lot of wrong choices. I wonder what that would be like. Discuss.
Well, I mean, if it could have, I mean, if it's got a massive database of expressive moments that have been, you know, from cherished performances, and it can go, well, at this particular musical junction, there's the drumming energy, just as you're coming into a chorus, the drummer's picking up the energy, and the soloist is going to try to lead up into, and then there's going to be like a shift into the chorus. So then there's an enormous database of all of that exact moment from classic records. Then it can probably find the right contour and the right kind of motion to make that, you know, really thrilling and, you know, expressive. I wonder whether that's even, because if you had it on a feedback loop, so that effectively, you know, what you played in, it responded to you, and then
the music was actually played by other humans or maybe other AIs. But if you think about it, how different is it from back in the day when you used to take a very processed kick feed and send that to somehow clock the rest of the playback? So, there were times where you would be able to have, so Ableton would maybe time stretch and play around the variable tempo of a drummer. So if it's if you've got a 4/4, something that's a rhythm that is readable, and then the tempo can be mapped. I mean, that's not AI, that's just machinery doing its thing. But I know. I think it's fascinating. I don't know. I mean, you're a great musician as well. I mean, do you think that that's ever likely to be a thing, or does it? Am I pie in the sky?
Well, I think now we've got the M3 chip, anything's possible.
There we go. Yeah.
I don't know.
The AI cores as well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The other thing about it is music has evolved, hasn't it? It's always evolved. It's always been different. It's people that wrote music and composed music couldn't conceive of what it would be like in 50 years' time, and we're all still musicians and we're still composing. So maybe this is just another part of the evolution of music, and maybe we shouldn't worry too much. I don't know. Who knows?
It's interesting though as well, because we're not the kids. We're people who've been involved in the industry for a number of years. So we would probably, if sampling had been introduced when we were at the same stage as we are in our career now, or cassette taping, all the things that everybody freaked out about, like home taping is killing music, and would we be worried in the same way that we might be worried about AI, or are we? I think that's just the nature of the human condition. We are bound to fear the thing that we're not quite sure what it's going to do to the thing that we do every day. I don't know. I mean, we could talk about this for an epic amount of time, and I probably was a bit foolish introducing it at this late stage in the show, but I just think there's more stuff. I'm just wondering if there's anything else to cover. I think we're pretty much there. There was something that I was going to talk about streaming, but I think I'm going to save that because I've put in a request for an interview with the person who brought this topic up, and I think that might be a really fascinating show. But just to describe, I had a topic that's essentially the notion that the canon of music in a streaming library is so big. We're talking petabytes, 20, 30 petabytes, and it costs about $30 a terabyte to store that data a month on, say, Amazon S3. Obviously, there will be discount for larger amounts. So just the amount of money it costs to store all of the music for us to stream is so insanely high now that we're getting into a situation where it all has to be solved. I will leave that there. I don't think I want to comment on it, but that's what the topic was going to be about. Maybe if the guy comes back to me and says, I don't want to be on camera, then we'll introduce it next week. But maybe that, for everybody's homework, we can think about that for next time. So, Jem, thank you so much for joining us. I can see it's got dark where you are. I hope it's not spooky. And did you get many trick-or-treaters, or are you down a drive and you've got hounds and things?
No, I've got. Well, actually, this was the classic thing. I was the year before last. I didn't buy any sweets, and there was. And then what do? You look like the world's grumpy. You look like Joe Mangle out of Neighbours, don't you? If you do that. So this year I went down. I got loads of sweets. Got all the big bowls of sweets. Nothing.
Well, it did rain heavily yesterday.
Yeah. Well, there is that. Yeah, there is that. So I'm going to tonight at my dinner. I'm going to work my way through 40 bags of Haribo. Basically, that's my dinner.
Well, funnily enough, that's what happened in our house, and I'll be having for tea tonight, because they didn't eat them all, even though it was the third bucket of sweets because they were bought well in advance.
Haribo is lovely fried. Really lovely fried. It's like, you put a bit of olive oil in there, get it nice, and it all congeals. It's lovely.
Are you? I don't believe you.
Try it and see.
In an air fryer. I think if you fried Haribo, it would probably combust in a sort of. There must be some sort of petrochemical content in there somewhere. It's probably going to explode.
Only
I think we might have a title. Hold on, I've just got to make a note of this. The fried Haribo, I think, might have to be the show title. I'm just going to make it.
Yeah.
777. The number of fried Haribo.
From AI to fried Haribo in about 2 minutes. Only here. I love it.
I tell you what, I saw though on X, formerly Twitter. God, it's so irritating, isn't it? But apparently, there's been lots of because people have all got like these video doorbells now. They've been putting out like big tubs, like I think in America, big tubs of sweets, and they've been catching like parents come in and just taking all the sweets. Just taking all the sweets, like quick, loaded all the sweets. It's just, it's just like,
it's desperate, isn't it? Funny story, actually. I think Non-Eric, when he was a child, the family home was on the border of the estate of the Haribo family. And so every Christmas they would go down to the sort of the gateway, where the peasants were sort of would doff their caps to the Haribo, Mr. Haribo or Lord von Haribo or whatever he was, and they would be given all of these Haribo sweets at Christmas. And there were reindeer. I think he said there were reindeer around the place because Haribo was so wealthy. So that I don't know where that came from, but I just thought as it was a Haribo based fact, I thought I'd throw it in. Right, I think it's probably Jem. What's next for you? We'll say our goodbyes before we get down a rabbit hole or a Haribo hole.
A Haribo hole. I'm fifth Frost album. I'm starting it today. I've got 3 months, so from now to the end of January. That's literally it. I've set it all up. I've got the songs written. I'm going to just through Christmas produce the album, get out the other side, and that's me done for the next quarter of the year. That's what I'm doing. Wow.
Nice. Well, that sounds like a momentous day. What do you start with? A click track, hi-hats, bass line?
Well, it's normally it's normally trying to unpick the appalling demos I've made and actually make them
rearrange them.
So, So
rearrangement. Okay. Nice. And Mr. Gaz Williams, are you streaming tonight, or are you?
Yeah, I'm going to stream. I've just decided. I was wondering. I was sat here thinking you could
spontaneous.
Yeah. Because I was going to try and do this thing earlier on the show here, but we've got this to look at, which is the Cosmos.
Oh yeah, that was the thing that we. I reckon we sold about 10 of those during that show.
Well, yeah, to me, one of them. But it's a really, look, it's a lot small. It's a lot smaller than I was expecting.
It is, isn't it?
Really.
That's the Pigtronics. What's it called? Pigtronics
Cosmosis. It's essentially a reverb pedal, but it does have this really nice morph facility. And so we'll have a little look at that amongst some other things as well. I've also, where is it? No, it's downstairs. Something else I'm going to look at tonight is the Yamaha FGPD 50. That's the drum
you've got that, the drum pads. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're going to have a little look at that as well. And that thing is actually, it's brilliant. But do you know what, though? There is something missing from it. I haven't found any way to do it. There's no way to MIDI sync it. It's got MIDI, so you can, and MIDI over USB, only MIDI over USB, sadly, but because it's got like beat repeats and various things like that, but there doesn't appear
there's no clock input. There's no clock.
No clock input. I've tried. I can't find any.
That's a bit of a bloody oversight.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, because it's designed to be like a real-time playing thing, whether they were just trying. Sometimes Japanese marketing is like, no, this is what it's for. This is what it's for.
I know what you're saying.
But I'm sure that's something that they will address in a firmware update. Or it may, in fact, do it, and I've just been a bit of a numpty and haven't figured out how. But anyway, we're going to have a look at that tonight and the Cosmosis. So please join me 8 p.m. on the Gaz Williams Show on YouTube. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, nice one. That's a very slick ending to a possibly, technically not too challenged show. I think I got most of it right. Didn't get any wrong videos, I don't think. So I'm feeling the call of the Stream Deck is waning. I'm afraid, Di Stanton. I'm not sure if I'm going to need it. I think I'll be all right. I use the Stream Deck for other things, but this isn't one of them. Anyway, that's it for this time. We'll be back next week. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you all on another show. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks.